Greetings to everyone. As promised, I'm uploading a video for chapters 13 and 14, just touching on some of the key highlights for services and then pricing strategy. Again, my apologies not being able to be with you. I know it's been kind of tough with spring break being in there, so we've had a couple weeks in a row where we weren't able to gather on Class for Teams. We will be back on October 23rd on Thursday at 6 p.m. for our Class for Teams. So for those of you that like that kind of format and like the modality, plan on meeting 6 o'clock October 23rd for our Class for Teams, and then we should be good the rest of the semester, the remaining weeks through October and the rest of November. So kicking off our week in chapters 13 and 14. So services are a little different than products, right? And we'll talk about some of the key differentiating things about how it's consumed, how it's used, how consumers view it. And we'll talk a little bit about pricing strategy as well. So, services it's an intangible offering, right? And one of the key things is when we pay for a service, we usually consume it. There's nothing left over. There's not a durable good that we take away. And it can be provided by all sorts of different industries, all sorts of different firms. So it's not just like, a service just isn't one thing or one industry specific, as you all know as consumers. The other thing to remember about service, overall service, is customer service, right? The wraparound complementary stuff that we do in that customer service piece, and how that can be such a differentiating factor, not only to your marketing strategy, but your overall business strategy. The service product continuum that talked about that, right? It's something like a doctor's office. I think there's a high touch thing there, high level of service, what's expected, that bedside manner, right? Other things, like grocery stores, we go in, we kind of pick out our own stuff, right? If we go shop in person, of course, if we do online shopping, we have it picked up for us. So it's different. I mean, it is kind of, it can be very high touch, or it can be very much more kind of a self-serve model when we look at services and how we consume them. Some important things when we think about it, right? More and more developed economies, right, have more of a service component to it, right? As production is they find, the production of durable goods moves around from time to time based on where investment is, based on economic decisions, based on a lot of times domestic political decisions about budgetary priorities. So production could be cheaper domestically, could be cheaper internationally, but that service component kind of stays close by, partly because services become more specialized to a region, and it also is much more easy to produce or deliver the service immediately where it's being needed. And also consumers are, placing a high value on convenience and leisure. As the economy becomes more developed, the standard of living increases, people tend to put more of a value on that leisure, and on that convenience piece becomes more and more important. There's several key things about how they differs, how the marketing messaging and kind of the marketing strategy or mindset might differ from a service, from a product. So we're going to look at a couple of those, right? Inseparable, intangible, perishable, our book talks about, and then this big term, heterogeneous. And the heterogeneous part just means the more that there's people or a human touch involved in delivering the service, the harder it is to provide consistency. And I'll give you an example of that as we go into it. So, services, that intangible piece of services, that can't necessarily be touched, taste, seen, right? Customers definitely need cues to remind them, hey, this service is there, right? Atmosphere can be really important in our text messages, which I think are really good, and images, right, can be really good to convey value. So we talk about a company like Walt Disney, right? You go visit one of their theme parks, right? That could be an intangible kind of experience, right? Images convey that value, right, of their characters, of the smiles of children, the smiles of families, that overall experience, right? I think anytime you're selling an experience, you're selling a service kind of piece, it's intangible. Right, that experience you're getting is phenomenal, but it's much more different than a specific product, right? Production and consumption, you can't separate them. They're simultaneous, right? There's not a lot of opportunity for a customer to test it, and there's lower risk if you offer, guarantees or warranties, because it's not necessarily going to stay there forever, right? It's not like a durable good like a car where you have a warranty. Right? And if you think about that, that's interesting, right? A service, you pay for it, you consume it, it's either good or bad, but it's kind of gone, right? You purchase a car or a flat screen TV or something like that, right? That's a durable good. That could be with you 3, 5, 7, 10 years, right? So if you regret that purchase, think about that for people in the durable goods segment, and how that differs from services, right? That product's there. You're stuck with it. Right. And they have to, and so their reputation can become, it can be a daily reminder for years when it's a durable good. Whereas a service, right, it's there, you experience it and it's gone, right? And just how some of the messaging, the buyer's remorse, what maybe some of the follow-up, driving consumer loyalty, right? What that might look like, or that might differ from a service to a product. There's lots of questions to think about there. Then they talk about this heterogeneous piece that the more humans are needed to provide the service, the more there's variability. And that can cause either high levels of customer satisfaction or not even intentionally, but completely unintentionally, high levels of consumer dissatisfaction. So, an example I would share from my own work when I worked in the financial services sector, we would have different branches for our credit union, right? And it was well intended. Like there were some of our branches where they would like, anything our customers or members wanted, they would do, right? In a couple cases, right, again, it was good intention. We were trying to serve our members, do all the right things. But in a couple cases, what our members or our credit union customers were asking us to do was actually damaging our equipment. It was causing damage to some of the equipment and some of the things we were doing, right? If any of you used a drive-through, go through the drive-through lanes at your financial institution, right? Those vacuum tubes, right? There's certain things you shouldn't put in those, and there's certain weight limits on those. And our employees are trying to go above and beyond, serve our credit union members. But some of the stuff that we were being asked to do is actually damaging the equipment. So we would have credit union members that would go to one branch. They would ask for certain transactions to be handled through the drive-through, and our staff was trying to be give great customer service. They would do it, right, but either very short term or over a period of a couple of weeks, a couple of months, it would damage the equipment doing that. Okay. So then they would go to another branch and they would say, hey, we can't do that through the drive-through. It damages our equipment. Can you come into our branch and we'll be happy to take care of you? And our customers were upset. Well, I can do it at this other branch, right? You see what I mean? That human element of wanting to serve our customers. And sometimes our customers' expectations were at such a place or artificially set high by wanting to do the right thing, but not realizing we were damaging our equipment, right? So the desire to serve caused, hey, I can get this done here. I can't get this done here, but we shouldn't have been doing this here because it was damaging equipment and causing, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars in repairs. So anytime, again, best intentions don't always result in the best levels of customer service, right? And they talk about, the importance of training and technology and understanding why we do certain things and, being obviously very gracious with customers and always wanting to serve them, but yet, that training technology piece, understanding how things work and what they're capable of and what would be our limitations of processes or equipment becomes very important. And then services are perishable, right? They generally can't be stored for future use, right? They talk about things like, an airline trip, you purchase your ticket, you get on your airline, you can't store that flight, right? So, restaurants, right? Restaurants deal with that, right? All the time, that perishability piece. So as we think about that, that's just some ways that products and services really differ, right? When we think about providing great service, and the text talked about the service gaps model, right? So there could be a knowledge gap, right? So if we're thinking of being able to provide great service to members, right? There's a knowledge gap, right? So understanding the customer's expectations and evaluating service quality is really important. We definitely sometimes don't understand what the customer's expectations are, or we maybe artificially set them way too high or way too low, right? And of course, we constantly want to evaluate how we're doing in providing that service, right? Expectations are based on experience, right? It depends on the situation, depends on the environment. It can be very industry and very organizationally specific, right? There's metrics we can use, right? Around service quality and how we're providing that service. Is it reliable, responsive? The assurance piece, right? Empathy, tangibles, right? All really good things. We definitely want to make sure that our employees are well trained. They can deal with things. We want to be responsive. Want to be reliable to those that we're providing our service to, right? Nothing's worse. We all know it, right? When we purchase a service, and I'm thinking like our cell phone service or internet service, right? That doesn't work, right? It's not reliable. That becomes a problem, right? The empathy piece, right? When things aren't going right, empathy is one of the greatest things we can do when there's a customer service issue or resolution to come to, right? We want to set good standards around our service, right? That becomes really important. That standards are set, that we do good training. People know what we're trying to deliver. We're trying to deliver a premium experience. What is our customer paid for? What does our customer expect? And then having the standards in place to deliver that. And we can reduce that delivery gap. Empower the people providing the service, right? How do we use technology to close the gap between the consumer and what they're trying to attain, right? And then, of course, supporting employees. The employees are the ones in the service industry. The employees are essentially your product, right? They're the ones that are going to be delivering the service, whatever that service looks like. So they need to be well trained. They need to be confident. They need to feel valued, just like a customer needs to feel valued. So that becomes an important piece of this. Um, One of the big pieces about empowering people who are providing the service, right? Tony Hsieh at Zappos did not measure his customer service call center success by the number of calls per hour, right? A lot of you customer service call centers, if you've ever worked in them, right, they have metrics around. One of the metrics is number of calls per hour. So if I have to take 12 calls per hour to make my goal, right, to meet my bonus, meet my goal, to be rated, satisfactory or providing at a or performing at a satisfactory level, well, we all can do the math, right? If I take 12 calls per hour, that means I need to spend an average of 5 minutes on a call, right? Well, what happens if somebody needs 30 minutes and someone needs 30 seconds, right? As I'm getting to 5 minutes with one person, I'm going to start getting antsy and itchy, right? So what we need to do is, what Tony Hsieh said is, empower the customer service call center staff to take care of the customer, right? Take care of the customer, what the customer needs. If someone needs 30 minutes, take 30 minutes, right? Because that person's going to become a loyal customer, right? And that's what we want. Loyal customers, repeat business. Don't get them off the phone in 5 minutes so they don't get their problems answered or issue resolved. Don't push them off the phone in 5 minutes and tick them off and make them even more angry. Make sure that you take care of them. Now, do we need to know, for efficiency standpoint, should we know on average how many calls we can take per hour? Absolutely, right? But to make that as the metric is like the gold standard for success and bonuses and performance around a customer service call center. No, what you want to measure is customer service satisfaction or customer service loyalty, and how much that drives repeat business after your customers engage with your customer service call center. And that's exactly what Tony Hsieh did. He had a great reputation for customer service. Unfortunately, he passed away several years ago, pretty young actually, but had a great mindset around providing great service to customers. Communications can be an issue, right? Obviously, we need to communicate. This is who we are as an organization. This is what we provide. Mission, vision, values. These are the services we provide, right? We can't be all things to all people, and that's really what the communications gap is about. Make sure you set clear expectations about what you can provide. The book talked about customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. Satisfied customers are good. I mean, they think they got good value for their money, but because satisfied customers are price sensitive, they will leave, right? If they find a better deal, a better price, they will leave. What you want to create are loyal customers who feel valued as individuals, and that becomes really important. Service recovery. So one of the things they find out is that when you have when you have a dissatisfied customer, right? If you truly listen to the customer, don't disrespect them, don't blame them for the problem. And this is basic customer service 101, but it gets messed up a lot. If you resolve problems quickly, find a fair solution, even if you can provide them some options, right? Of, hey, here's how I can resolve your problem, and give them 2 or 3 options and let them choose, right? That's ideal world if we can get to that point. If you can manage service recovery successfully, actually, customers become more loyal. Yes, they were dissatisfied at one time, they were upset, but if you handle that upset moment really well, they actually become more loyal, and they're more likely to tell people about how great your company is and bring you repeat business, which is what you want. You want repeat business from existing customers, because as we talked about this semester, repeat business from existing customers is cheaper than having to go attract a new customer, right? So obviously that becomes really important, navigating those things. So chapter 13, all about delivering that service. A couple highlight points. That customer service piece is so important. You might be delivering a service like a restaurant service or hair salon, or a service like entertainment type kind of service. But what really becomes important there also is the customer service. The people interaction piece can go a long way in driving your brand, driving consumer loyalty. And as we said, we want loyal customers, not just satisfied. Becomes increasingly important. So a little bit about pricing strategy and how we price. So the 5 C's of pricing should be tied into your company objectives. There it is again. Customers, cost, competition, and also our overall channel members, everyone kind of in that supply chain. And that creates value. When we take all those things into consideration, that conveys the message of what kind of value, right, we're going to provide. So there's a couple different strategies we can take around pricing, right? So it can be profit oriented. So we say we want an X number of profit margin, 5%, 15%, 30%. We can be sales oriented. So we set prices low so that we generate a lot of sales. So we capture market share. We can be competitor oriented, right? So we set prices so that we discourage, we make our pricing strategy a barrier to entry so that other people don't want to enter, competitors don't want to enter. Or it can be very customer oriented where we produce high value, right, for a particular product. It's our tech says it's very premium pricing where we produce a high experience, high value, and a lot of times that's around some sort of premium experience, right? Something specialized, right? And we look at different ways to do it, right? So there's all sorts of different ways to go about that. Our profit orientation, right? We maximize profits. We have some sort of target that we set. Might be just a policy or a process you follow in your company. All new products, right, have to have a 10% profit orientation or something like that, or the companies have different strategies around that, but your new product development teams kind of set that up. Your sales orientation, right, that's all about increasing sales, as I mentioned. The competitor, right, so how you price your product in relation to competitors tells everybody how you value your own product, right, what you think about it or how you value your service, right? So be careful where you place it in relation to the competition tells the world a lot about what you think about your product or service offering, right? Becomes really kind of important, right? There's things we've seen dynamic pricing, right? Different types of things willing to pay, right? We've seen some of this dynamic pricing where pricing fluctuates. Ticketmaster's actually got in trouble with this, right? Sporting venues have gotten in trouble with this, right? Where when it's high demand, prices are more, and when it's lower, demand is less. But there's been lawsuits and allegations. Well, it's falsifying demand, and it's showing that demand is always high, so it's driving up prices. Some of those pricing models that for online purchase, especially for tickets, for concerts, for sporting events, has gotten a lot of scrutiny. Where it's what has been the demand the last 24 hours, and that's where the price is set, right? Who can track whether there's actually been legitimate visits to the website? Is it some sort of AI? Is it some sort of bot? Is it some sort of something fake that's actually hitting the website to drive up prices, right? Or so it's always interesting that dynamic pricing model's gotten a lot of scrutiny for its effectiveness or for its lack of kind of consumer friendliness. And they talk about like price elasticity of demand, things that affect that, right? It's just important to know, right? Are consumers price sensitive, right? Are there substitutes available? If they are, they could be price sensitive, right? If there's a ability to change to a different product, they could be price sensitive, right? Just a couple of things to keep in mind, like how price sensitive are your customers, right? What's their overall income? What's the availability of our products, so they could switch, and the substitutions become really kind of important. We look at cost. So when we think of the total cost, right, we have variable costs, so that could vary with production volume, fixed costs, and then total cost, right? So some of this you guys have probably touched on, but it's good to know. Like your break-even point takes into account things like variable costs, fixed costs, and total cost, right? So your break-even point is your fixed cost divided by your contribution per unit, right? How much is it contributing to the bottom line? And our text did a pretty good job of explaining that. Just good to know where it is, where you're kind of that break-even point is, where you need to be. Like I need to make X number of products just to break even. After that, right, we're making profit. So it's good to know that. And that contribution point is the contribution to your fixed cost, right? How much is it contributing to what we have? So it's good to know. It's good number to keep in mind that we want to know how many we have to produce to meet our bottom line. We look at competition, right? There's less price at competition and things like a monopoly, right? Where one firm controls the entire market, or many firms sell differentiated products and services. They say that's less price competition. There's more price competition and things like pure competition, or where a handful of firms control the market and maybe they're competing against each other. Oligopolistic competition. I always mess that word up. The heterogeneous one I've gotten, but this one is a little trickier. But the oligopolistic competition, if you think of like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, right? There's a lot of price competition there, but there's 3 firms controlling the market, right? Where pure competition, there's a ton of firms controlling the market and almost commoditizes things, right? So again, it's just how different industries evolve over time and how key players either stay in the market or get out of the market, right? And we also look at how what's the impact of pricing on our entire channel members, right? On our suppliers, retailers, wholesalers. We look at all those people, and of course, the more people we add in there, right, they're all going to want the cut of the profits. So it's going to increase our price. So when we think about our distribution channels, that's one thing we need to think about. How much profit do we want or need, and how much are other people going to expect for helping us deliver our product or service? So just a few things to think about when it comes to some pricing strategy. Add a little bit context into it. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Look forward to being with all of you again next Thursday, the 23rd of October. Have a wonderful weekend. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.